What's up everybody, it's your boy Doody back again with another video. This time I'm taking a look at our boy DSP's React channel, or the DSPReacts channel, and taking a look at his review of The Last of Us Episode 7. And oh my lord, it just astounds me how tone deaf this person is, Phil. You're just utterly tone deaf. And then you wonder why people criticize you and people say the things they say about you. And yet you still don't understand why people feel the way they feel about you. And this react slash review slash spoiler alert slash it's not like the game react is a perfect example of this. So let's get into the video. I may skip around. It's a long react. So I may skip it. I cut it down. I think it was initially 16 minutes. I got it down to like 10 or 11, but I'll probably still jump around. So let's get into it.
Welcome to my continuing review series for The Last of Us television series on HBO Max. I am here to talk about episode 7. And this one, some people were anticipating it a lot. Others were dreading it. I saw some really mixed reactions on the internet for it. Based on the teaser that happened at the end of episode 6 when they showed scenes from it, you're like, really? They're doing this? In a series where they're trying to take arguably a 20 to 30 hour video game and they're trying to cram it into less than 9 hours of television, they're really going to go with this for episode 7? The answer is yes.
Again, what Phil fails to realize is he doesn't understand world building, and he's under this assumption that everything like the first game, Last of Us 1, is supposed to be crammed into the first season. And that's not the case, Phil. I'm assuming HBO, based on their track record, they'll probably make this series 5 or 6 seasons. That's typically what they do. So they need to stretch out essentially 2 games or 2 game storylines into 4 or 5 seasons, Phil. That's the reason why they're doing this. And I'll get into a little bit more once he starts talking about the episode. But spoiler alert, he has a problem that the show is not exactly like the game.
Ladies and gentlemen, episode 7 of The Last of Us TV series is the Left Behind DLC. The backstory of Ellie and her friend Riley, who are best friends in the same training camp, being taught military procedures and ways to survive in this ongoing apocalypse, cordyceps apocalypse, I guess you should say. Riley runs away and comes back and says, I'm leaving. I'm getting recruited by the Fireflies and I don't want to be here anymore. I don't like this militaristic way of life. They said that they're going to ship me off to basically do menial, trivial tasks for them, and I don't like this. I want to do something meaningful with my life, so I'm going to join the Fireflies. Okay. Ellie is upset. She doesn't want Riley to leave. And Ellie, basically, being the best friend of Riley, goes off on one final night where they go and explore the rooftops together. They drink liquor that was found by a dead guy that they run into, and they go into a shopping mall. Okay? Literally, the episode is meant to be 2 teen girls trying to be teen girls in the cordyceps apocalypse. Now, if you played the Left Behind DLC, you already know how this ends. I'm going to say spoiler alert for those who have not seen the Left Behind DLC, because I obviously need to recap what actually happens at the end, because it's actually quite significant. So the girls run through the mall. They look at clothes. They play with, various different things. They go on a merry-go-round together, as you can see here, carousel. They actually go into a video arcade and play video games, which of course is ridiculous because no, video games like that would not work in the apocalypse. They all have battery packs inside that need to be replaced. But of course, unless you're an expert about arcade machines, you wouldn't understand that. I know I used to own a Street Fighter arcade board, and I know that after about 15 years, the battery dies and needs to be replaced. You can't even use it anymore. But
That's 15 years of using it. So if you have it on and you use it, you get about 15 years. I'm assuming no one has used those arcade games for maybe 15 years. So maybe that's why the battery's still living. It astounds me. He picks the stupidest things to nitpick, but yet he's okay with the realization that this is a zombie apocalypse, a cordyceps zombie apocalypse. He's okay with that. He can suspend reality for that. But he can't suspend reality because they found an arcade machine that's, old and it's still working. God.
But I digress. It's meant to be a touching episode. One of the things that I was anticipating that never happens, okay? I remember specifically in the Left Behind DLC for the game, there's a scene where they put on Halloween masks, and they have, like, it's either water guns or Nerf guns. I forget. I think it might be water guns, but it might be Nerf guns too. And they're basically shooting each other, and that's actually some of the gameplay, because this DLC doesn't have much survival-style gameplay at all. It's mostly just two girls trying to be teenage girls in the apocalypse, which is kind of interesting and different and not expected. And so you're tagging each other, you're shooting each other. I remember that there's like this scary laughing sound effect from like a Halloween toy or whatever, or one of the masks does it during this event. That doesn't even happen in the show. They cut it out. So the one thing that I remember distinctly from the DLC that stood out, I was like, I'd like to see that in the show. They cut that part out. They did have the carousel. They had some food court scenes, various other things. So basically by the end of the episode, because it is a 40 to 50 minute episode, okay? You know, what happens in the game happens here. Now, hold on. Because this actual Left Behind DLC plot is wedged between what's actually happening in the present in the show. If you remember at the end of the last episode, episode 6, Joel got stabbed. And he's bleeding out. And so Ellie's trying to save him. Then all of a sudden they flash to the Left Behind story. Does it have any significance whatsoever in the plot of what's going on with Joel and Ellie? No.
Yes, it does. God, God. How can someone be so close-minded as this person? This is the reason why it's significant. Ellie's been alone by herself for a while. Her best friend passed away. Someone that she liked, maybe they were romantically connected or whatever, their best friend and so on, right? Someone that she spent her younger formative years with, right? Someone, probably the last person she really cared about in a long time, and she died. And in this type of story, you know, that can make you, you know, a hardened person, right? Where you don't care about people, you don't give a crap about people. You become a survivalist. If someone dies, oh well, that's just part of this existence, right, Phil? The reason why they wedged it in there is because when she saw Joe get stabbed, what they tried to do is they tried to show that Ellie cares for Joe, or Ellie is starting to care for Joe. And the last person that she probably cared about was that girl, her best friend. So that's why she flashed back to that. That was why it was a flashback. In her mind, the way the scene played out is she sees Joe's bleeding out. She's scared. She's starting to care for him. And the last person she cared for was her best friend, who ended up dying. So there's some trauma there. There's some, you know, she's thinking back to, oh my God, this is happening again. Someone I care about, or I'm starting to opening myself up to and have feelings for, may die as well. And that's traumatic. And that's the reason why they do that. And in a way, what they're doing is they're showing that Ellie is softening up to Joe and starting to actually care, and they're starting to build that relationship. That is the reason why they wedged it as a flashback film. Because right there at that time, she in her mind was thinking, oh my God, I remember when this happened to the person I cared about, the last person I cared about. And that's why they flash back to that story. That's why they did it, Phil. It's not... Oh my God. But again, it's not like the game, so that's a problem, of course.
Zero. It has nothing to do with that. They wanted to get it into the show, and they just wedged it in without any real rhyme or reason or explanation as to why it would be in episode 7. It just doesn't make sense. Okay? So, just for those who don't know, spoiler alert, at the very end of this episode of the two girls doing all these things, it's revealed that they basically have romantic feelings for each other and they kiss. Okay? Big deal. Who gives a crap? It easily could have been a boy and a girl. Could be a girl and a girl, a boy and a boy. It doesn't matter. It's modern day, 2023. Who gives two shits about this? I remember when the DLC came out like a decade ago. Well, I guess it was a little less than a decade ago. People were kind of, she's gay? Like,
yes, Phil, and you were one of those people. And I love how you say it's not a big deal. Why bring it up then? Why bring it up? You brought it up to make a point that you're going to make in a few minutes about 2 episodes where there was romantic relationships between non-heterosexual couples, right? The Bill story and now this Ellie story. and you want to couch it as, oh, they just shoehorned it in to be progressive. Yes, HBO is a progressive TV station, and yes, they do add progressive elements into their storylines. That's HBO, but it still doesn't mean you have to not dislike something or be, like I have my problems with certain TV shows on HBO, but I enjoy the content and I watch it. So that type of stuff, I either it is what it is, I ignore it, or I just say, okay, it's just part of the show, and I'll accept it and watch it, right? But you, Phil, try to claim that, oh, you don't care and it doesn't matter, whatever. But yet you spend most of this react talking about it, and even talking about episode 3 and that relationship. And what you fail to do is you fail to grasp how those stories will tie in later on. Like there's a part where in this react where you talk about you don't even know what happens to the girl, that girl, her friend or whatever, right? What you fail to realize, and why you don't understand movies and plots and arcs and stuff like that, they may be saving that for later, where Ellie has to go back to that mall with Joe, and she sees a cordyceps zombie girl, that zombie. She sees her, reacts, and then she's heartbroken. And then she has to make a decision to either kill her or just let her be. They may be doing that. They may have set it up that way to do that. But yet you're so close-minded and don't understand and can't comprehend world building and story arcs that it's too. If it's not in the if that, and that's why you keep harping on the TV series. If it doesn't follow the game, which is very linear and very, there are certain points and they stick with it because yes, it is a game and they can't overarch into more bigger story plot lines and so on, then you have a problem with it. What you need to understand, Phil, is that there's going to be 4 or 5 seasons of this show. Maybe 3, maybe 4, whatever. So they can't just do the game, both games. They can finish that off in 3 hours if they were just following the game, Phil. They want to world build and they want to bring in new characters and touch on existing characters and yes, make modifications.
It was some big deal. I didn't care. But, to see it represented on TV or whatever, it's cute, I guess. I don't really care. But then what ends up happens is, they're acting basically kind of stupid in this mall, making all this noise, thinking there's no infected. There are infected, and the infected attacked them. And they do manage to fend them off and kill the infected. But sadly, the infected bite them too. And the weird thing about the way they handled this, all right, and I don't know if this will be dealt with further down in the last 2 episodes of the show, because there's only 9 episodes. This is episode 7 was this whole thing, okay? As we know, Ellie survives. Ellie is immune to the infected bite.
Yes, and that's how they actually gave a little bit of backstory on how she initially got that bite. Remember in the first couple episodes when they met Joel and Tess, right? And they saw that she was bit and they freaked out and they were ready to kill her, and she convinced them, no, I'm not infected. That's what they were going with this episode, with that flashback. They wanted to show the origin of that bite. So that's why they put it into the show, Phil. Again, it's just expanding on the game, Phil.
But her friend Riley is not. Her friend Riley is going to turn into a cordyceps zombie and die. But what happened? We don't know. Because guess what happens? They shows them being very sad and that they're bitten. And then they decide they're just going to spend their final hours together or final days together, however long it takes for them to turn. And then it cuts away and goes right back to present day and shows that Ellie has found a sewing kit and is sewing up Joel. And that's the end of the episode.
Again, yes, like I stated earlier, they were trying to show how Ellie is starting to have feelings for Joe. Not feelings, romantically, but like as a father figure. She's starting to care for someone. And the last person she actually cared for was her friend that actually passed away and died. They don't need to show what happened. You know what happened. She got bit. She's not immune. She's going to pass away, and they cut away. I'm pretty sure they're going to come back to it. And maybe there's an episode where they go back to the mall for supplies or whatever the case is, Joe and her, and they see her, and then she gets emotional. She has to make a decision whether to kill her. Maybe she can't, and then Joe has to step in and put her down. That's probably what they're going to do with this, Phil. And they did something very similar with Walking Dead. Remember Walking Dead? Remember in the first season, there was one guy who got bit after the camp, and they were going to put him down, but they weren't sure. Then they decided, well, let's go to the CDC. Maybe they have a cure. They took him to the CDC. He couldn't make it. He said, just let me off on the side of the road. They left him out on the side of the road, right? In front of a tree. They gave him a gun. I think it was a gun or something. And they said goodbye. And you didn't see the guy again till season, I think, 6 or 7, where Carl was in that area walking through and he saw a decomposed person. That was him. He was laying up against a tree. He kind of melted into the tree, and it was him. And that's how they tied that one scene where they cut away and didn't show what happened to him. It paid off years later. And that's probably what they're going to do here, Phil. God Lord. It's not difficult. It's called world building. It's called a story arc. It's called using a scene now and having a payoff later on, Phil. I think you're under this assumption that there may be 1 or 2 seasons and they're just going to follow the first 2 games and that's it. No, they're going to use that as a reference point and then build upon that. They're going to get to a point where they're going to bypass the whole episode game 2, and they're going to have to start building on that lore based on an outline by Neil Druckmann. Walking Dead did that. Game of Thrones did it, because the source material wasn't completed, and they essentially got an outline, and then they built stories based on that, Phil. I don't know if I could keep going. I'm already at 16 minutes. I'm already annoyed. Let me move a little bit forward and see what else he has to say with his React content.
That's it. So the episode starts, I have to save Joel, he's bleeding out. Cuts to the Left Behind plot for literally no reason whatsoever. Cuts back to present day, and that's the end of the episode. No resolution, because you actually don't know what happened to Riley. Now, if you've played the games, you find out she's dead. She got killed. She turned into a cordyceps zombie or whatever. Did Ellie do her in? We don't know. Because, the whole plan was the two of them were supposed to basically die together. But what happens when Riley started turning and Ellie wasn't? Did she turn on her and kill her? Did she leave her there? Did she, what happened?
Yes, Phil. I see you're evolving here and kind of understanding, but you fail to take that last step. They're going to bring it up later on. In another story, like I said, her and Joe are probably going to have to go to the mall. They're going to do a flashback where she remembers she was there, and she's going to be hesitant to go in. She goes in, and maybe she finds a cordyceps zombie, her friend. And they're chasing her or whatever, and then she doesn't have the heart to put her down, and then maybe Joe has to step in or whatever the case is. Or maybe they just let her be. That's what they're going for here, Phil.
We don't know. There was no explanation. And with only 2 episodes left, I wonder if they're even going to explain it or just leave it unfinished, unexplained. It's kind of messed up, actually. Okay? So here's the thing. All right? That's the episode. It's a whole, 40, 50 minutes of the Left Behind plot. All right? It does cut out some stuff, because I remember in the Left Behind, there was a few other things they did in the mall, and I believe there was a section or 2 where they had to survive against the infected or something, or raiders. It was one or the other. I can't really remember. It was nice. It was nicely shot. I think the Riley actress was actually quite good as well. Everything was done well, just like the whole series. You can't complain. The cinematography's been good. The music is good. The acting is good. But when it all comes down to it, there's basically one glaring problem with this episode, all right? And simply put, all right, it's a rerun. Added to the plot that wasn't in the games, okay? Wasn't at all. It was added completely, changed that little bit of information we had about the games, about Bill having this relationship, and turned it into a whole full-blown episode. It was nice the way that it was in the series, but I told you in my review of that, it basically would have been great as a standalone, but if we're trying to tell the story of The Last of Us, the story of Joel and Ellie, why is this in the series, correct?
Do I need to say anything more? It wasn't a rerun. The only thing that was the same of episode 3 and 7, the only thing that was the same was that it was a gay relationship. That's what you're hinting at, Phil, right? It's a rerun because they focused on 2 people having gay relationships. That's why it was a rerun, Phil. There were 2 different storylines, and the third one was a payoff to how he got the truck, how he got his supplies, how he was able to get to a certain point. So it progressed the story, Phil. And it did talk about Bill and kind of his backstory. Again, they have multiple seasons to fill of content. You have 2 games that are the source material. You have to add stuff, Phil. This episode, again, is different. It's not like episode 3. It showed how Ellie cared about someone. They died, right? And now, Joe is probably the next person in a long time where, she started to care for someone. And maybe she feels vulnerable. Maybe she feels like, oh, if I care for him, then I'm going to get heartbroken because he's going to get killed. And I can't take that pain because the person I cared about before, I couldn't do anything to save, and she passed away as well. Or they may tie it back later on and have them go to that mall, have them encounter the cordyceps girl, and Ellie having a breakdown and not being able to put her down and just having those emotional conflicts, and how her and Joe come together in that pain because, Tess passed away because she was bitten. There was nothing he can do. So, all right, I'm at 21 minutes, folks. I'm cutting it here. I can't do any more. It's difficult to react to someone with such a closed mind that, anything, his OCD doesn't allow him to experience new things or experience old things in a new light. He just refuses to do that. And he's not intelligent enough. And I hate to say that, but he's not intelligent enough to go from point A to point C. He can only do A and B, and that's it. And if there's an interruption in that flow, it warps his thinking and it bothers him. And that's the problem here. Since the series isn't like the game, then Phil has trouble comprehending and moving on from this. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Peace out.